No one ever shows up at my office before noon unless they're desperate, delusional, or both. The Thursday morning drizzle has only just started to dissolve the grime off the city, and I'm still working on a mug of black coffee with the consistency of sump oil when I hear the shuffling, indecisive knock. I let it go once, twice, because the people who really want in will keep knocking. The third tap is heavier, almost hopeful. I sigh, wedge a legal pad under the broken leg of my file cabinet, and tell myself I'll pretend not to notice the coffee stain on my shirt if the client doesn't either. "Come in," I call. My voice is gravel. Blame the coffee or the city. The man who edges in has the build of someone who used to jog before his knees gave out. Late 50s, balding, face like a soft-boiled egg that spent a few years in a tanning bed. His overcoat looks like it cost more than my last 3 weeks' groceries, but it sags at the shoulders as if he's training to be a coat rack. He smells faintly of panic and cheap aftershave. He stands just inside the door, hands knotted in front of his stomach like he's expecting a searchlight and a firing squad. I give him a few seconds of silence. It's an old cop trick. Let the perp stew, let him talk himself into a confession. He doesn't disappoint. "Mr. Hunt," he says, finally. His voice is lighter than I expect, but it wobbles. "Detective Riley Hunt?" "Not a detective anymore," I say. "Riley's fine." I wave him toward the chair across from my desk. He looks at it the way a man looks at a gallows, but sits anyway. I make a point of nudging the desk so the mug full of pens doesn't tip into his lap. "You're early." Yes, I was in the area. He's not lying. His eyes flicker to the window, then back to me, never quite meeting my gaze. "Not many people in this part of town in the area at 8 a.m., I say, unless they're paying me or selling me toner." I gesture at his coat. "Which is it?" He blinks, unsure if I'm joking. My name is Harold Mason. I called yesterday. About my wife." Now we're getting somewhere. "Ann Mason," I prompt. I always read the voicemail twice before deleting. He nods, throat bobbing like he's trying to swallow the whole story in one go. "You said you, handle domestic matters." I pick up a pen, click it once, just to give his nerves something to focus on. "That's right?" He waits, like he expects me to do a magic trick. When I don't, he starts talking, the words tumbling out all at once. "She's been different, cold, distant. Not that we were—" He catches himself, glances at his shoes. "We had problems after the thing with my business last year, but she's never been cruel. Lately, it's like she's a different person. She comes home late. Her phone is always locked, always with her. She started wearing perfume again." His hands worry the air in front of him, shaping a ghost. "The expensive kind, Chanel. She used to hate perfume." I jot a few words, not for my benefit, but for his. "People feel better if they think you're building a case, even if you're just drawing cartoon tits in the margins. And you want to know if there's someone else," I say, keeping it gentle. He winces. "Yes, but it's not just that." He finally meets my eyes. There's no anger in his face, just hurt. "It's my daughter, Julia. She's everything to me. 14, bright kid, likes books. Anne's been saying I'm—" He sucks in a breath, looks away. "That I'm unstable, that the stress from the business ruined me. She says she wants full custody." A familiar story. I see it a dozen times a year, usually with less honesty. "What kind of stress?" "I ran a transportation company, regional. Nothing fancy, but it kept us comfortable." He swallows, tries to smooth the creases from his slacks. "COVID hit, contracts dried up. I had to let most people go. There were mistakes, bad investments, but I've never hurt anyone. never so much as raised my voice at Julia. I believe him, but that's not what courts care about. Anne has a lawyer? I ask. He nods. One of the expensive ones. It's like she's been planning this for months, while He trails off, then snorts softly. While I was busy feeling sorry for myself. I lean back, let the chair's springs creak. What do you want from me, Harold? He hesitates. Find out if there's something I can use. Not to hurt her, just to even the odds. Julia's almost old enough to decide for herself, but Anne keeps saying I'm unfit. I don't want to lose my daughter, Mr. Riley. It's not the first time a man's asked me to save his family by exposing it. Usually, by the end, all I'm saving are the fragments. Do you have a recent photo of Anne? I ask. He slides his phone across the desk. I half expect him to flinch, but he doesn't. The lock screen is a selfie of the three of them in happier times, smiles staged for the camera, and a sunset behind them so perfect it almost looks real. Anne is attractive, early 40s, hair the color of polished chestnut. In the photo, her eyes are on her daughter. In the real world, her gaze would be somewhere else by now. I click through, looking for a recent shot. The most recent is at a charity dinner, Anne's hand draped over Harold's arm. She's thinner, sharper. The smile doesn't reach her eyes. I hand the phone back. Do you want me to follow her? I ask. Harold stares at the screen like he's forgotten how to use it. Is that what people do? Most people just hire lawyers, I say. But lawyers don't tell you what's in the shadows. I do, for a price. He nods, almost grateful. I can pay. I quote my rate. It's not gouging, but it's not charity either. He says, I'll transfer the retainer today. Just be discreet, for Julia's sake. I write down a number on the back of a business card, slide it to him. Don't worry, I only get caught when I want to. He half laughs, and for a second I see the man he used to be. Thank you, Riley. I don't want to believe. I cut him off. Don't finish that sentence. Belief is what people pay priests for. You're paying me for the opposite. He stands. The coat hangs on his frame like a funeral shroud. At the door, he pauses. You ever lose someone? He asks, almost as an afterthought. I look out the window, where the rain has started to draw greasy veins down the glass. Everyone does, I say. He nods, leaves, and the smell of aftershave lingers, mingling with the cheap coffee and old paper. I wait until I hear his footsteps fade down the hall, then reach for my camera. Old habits die hard. The city is full of liars and cheaters, but it's the honest ones who make you work for your money. By noon, the rain will clear and the city will pretend it's clean again, but it never is. Not really. I jot a note. Ann Mason, perfume, locked phone, lawyered up, daughter in crosshairs. It's nothing I haven't seen before, but every family thinks their tragedy is a new invention. The phone buzzes. Unknown number. I answer, just to see. A woman's voice, clipped and perfect, says, Mr. Hunt, I'd like to schedule an appointment. I smile, thin and slow. You're right on time, Mrs. Mason. Surveillance is 90% waiting, 8% improvising, 2% getting the shit kicked out of you. I'm good at the first one. Maybe too good. My ride is a '99 Corolla with a cracked windshield and a tape deck jammed on Springsteen's Nebraska. I park it across from Ann Mason's gated community and spend the next hour letting the rain hammer out its grievances on the roof. I've got binoculars, a notepad, and a camera with better low light than most hotel rooms in this city. Ann's car is exactly what you'd expect. European, black, polished to an aggressive shine. She leaves her place at exactly 10:01, 3 minutes after her husband calls to tell me he's dropping off Julia at school. She's punctual, which means either she's hiding something or she's just efficient. In my experience, it's usually both. I hang back 2 cars, keeping the Corolla's lights off. It's a Tuesday, but traffic in Miami doesn't give a damn what day it is. Anne glides through the mess, always in the right lane until it's time to make a move. Then she's cutting in with surgical precision. There's a control to it. No wasted motion. She's not new at this. She ends up at a cafe off Calle Ocho, the kind of place where the menu is all chalk and the tables wobble on linoleum. Neon leaks through the steamed-up windows. She goes inside. I give her 2 minutes, then follow. I leave the camera in the car, but bring the notebook. No one in this part of town cares if you're taking notes, as long as you're not taking tips. The place smells like burnt toast and last night's coffee. Anne is at a corner booth, tapping her phone with the cool impatience of someone who's been stood up before. Then he walks in. Victor Novak, if I'm reading the body language right. European suit, expensive but a half-size too tight across the chest. Hair slicked back, but a couple curls refuse to submit. Eyes that sweep the room and stick on anything with a pulse. He's got the look of a man who's left a few bodies in shallow graves, but tonight he's all smiles as he slides into the booth across from Anne. She doesn't smile back. That gets my attention. They talk, voices low. I can't hear much from the counter, so I order a double espresso and pretend to study the menu. The waitress gives me the look reserved for drunks and private eyes. She doesn't ask for a name. She already knows I don't belong. I angle my head, catch snippets. Anne's voice is sharp, each syllable like she's paring an apple. Novak leans in, sometimes touching her hand, sometimes tapping the table with 2 fingers. He keeps his left hand on the seat beside him, where Anne can see it. She never glances away. After 10 minutes, he slides a manila envelope across the table. It's fat, the way legal envelopes get when someone's about to lose a lot of money or a little bit of freedom. Anne hesitates, then puts it in her purse. The whole thing is practiced. It's not the first envelope he's ever passed her, and probably not the last. The rest is small talk. Anne sips her coffee. Novak orders nothing, just lets his fingers play on the table's edge. When she finally gets up, he stands, bows his head slightly, then sits back down to watch her leave. I step out behind her, get a few shots from the Corolla as she pulls away. She stops at a red light, checks her phone, then tucks it out of sight. I note the time, the route, the fact that she doesn't look back even once. Most people would, if they thought they were being followed. When I check the rear view, Novak's out on the curb, staring directly at me. He lights a cigarette, European style, one-handed, casual, like the world's already paid him in advance. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't blink either. I drive off first. I follow Anne for another half hour. She hits a dry cleaner, a pharmacy, then circles back toward home. Routine, but she double parks at the pharmacy and leaves the engine running. Inside, she's only in for 2 minutes, which means she knew what she needed and didn't want to be seen there. I jot it down. Maybe Harold will want to know what his wife is buying on the sly. Back at the office, the rain is tapering off, leaving the world freshly filthy. I print the best shot of Anne and Novak, the envelope clearly in frame. If there's anything Miami loves more than humidity, it's evidence. I call Harold. He picks up on the first ring, which means he's been waiting. "Yes, it's me," I say. "Your wife had a meeting this morning." He's quiet. I wait him out. Was it him? I don't waste time. Handsome guy, maybe Eastern European? Late 30s? He exhales. I thought so. She had a name in her planner once. Victor. Novak, I say. I got a photo. He doesn't ask for it. What did they do? I keep it clinical. Talked, exchanged an envelope. She looked nervous. He looked like he owned the place. Harold grunts. That's him. Thank you, Riley. Do you want to know what was in the envelope? He hesitates. Would it help? Sometimes, I say. Depends what kind of help you want. The line goes silent, but only for a moment. Find out, he says. Whatever it is, I need to know. I hang up and stare at the photo for a long minute. Most days, I want to believe there's a reason people do what they do, that there's some meaning to the lies, the betrayal, the need to hide. But tonight, all I see is two people in a booth, playing at love or war or both, and a man on the outside looking in. I wonder which one I am. The phone buzzes again, this time a text. Number blocked, but the message is clear. You're getting close. Back off. No signature? They never do. I turn off the lights, lock the door, and settle in with the espresso until sleep wins. Tomorrow I'll start tailing Novak. Maybe he'll lead me to a story I haven't already read 100 times, but I doubt it. The Corolla's defroster is a sad joke. I spend most of the morning scraping condensation off the inside of the windshield with a parking stub and rehearsing explanations for why I'm loitering in a grocery lot at noon. It's raining again, Miami's version of a Cold War, perpetual and never quite decisive. The parking lot is a half-flooded sea of abandoned carts, soggy receipts, and the occasional desperate shopper. I blend right in. Anne pulls up first, driving the same high-end import from yesterday. She parks under a flickering sodium lamp, the kind that paints everything a bruised yellow. She waits, checking the rear view so often I can see her knuckles go white from 2 cars over. Victor's ride arrives 10 minutes late. He pilots a murdered-out Escalade, which is a little on the nose but fits his style. He doesn't park next to Anne. He circles, once, twice, then takes the spot behind her. It's the move of a man who likes his exits planned. They get out at the same time, synchronized like they rehearsed it. Anne's got an umbrella, but she doesn't open it. Victor walks bareheaded through the rain, like he wants the world to see him. I flick the camera on, set the lens for low light, and hope the drizzle doesn't drown the shutter noise. They meet between the cars. Anne doesn't speak. Victor does, fast and low, gesturing with sharp, precise movements. He hands her an envelope, bigger than yesterday's, wrapped in plastic against the rain. She tries to take it discreetly, but he makes a show of it, holding it up until she's forced to reach. For a second, their hands overlap, and Victor's thumb lingers on her wrist. I catch the moment. Click, click, click. The old cannon's motor drive grinding like a bad tooth. No one looks my way. Victor steps closer, says something that makes Anne flinch. He leans in, too close for comfort, or maybe just close enough. Anne squares her shoulders, says something back, then tucks the envelope into her coat and walks away, fast, head down. Victor stands in the rain a while longer, arms out like he's daring it to wash him away. Then he gets back in the Escalade and pulls out slow, a shark cruising for its next meal. Anne sits in her car, not moving, for a full 5 minutes. Then she dials her phone and talks with the windows up, the wipers beating a nervous tattoo. I zoom in, catch the way she chews her lip, the way her fingers tremble as she holds the phone. This isn't a love affair. It's a hostage exchange. She hangs up, puts the car in gear, and is gone. I scan the lot for a tail. There isn't one. Not yet. I review the shots on the camera, flipping through the digital display like a detective at a lineup. The exchange is clear as day. 2 people, envelope, rain. Not enough to win a custody war, but enough to burn a reputation if you light the match right. I jot a note. Not an affair. Leverage, blackmail. Anne scared of Victor. Underline it twice. I drive back to the office, windshield wipers working overtime, thinking about Harold and his daughter, about how people think parking lots make them invisible, but nothing's invisible when you know where to look. When I hit a red light, I look in the rear view and see the same Escalade, 2 cars back. It's going to be that kind of week. The voices start in the kitchen after midnight. I hear them through the wall, the way you hear trains at night, distant, inevitable, shaking the bones of the house. Dad keeps his voice low, but Mom's words slice right through, even when she whispers. I lie perfectly still, arms tight at my sides under the covers, counting the seconds between sentences. The rain outside has stopped, but the gutter by my window ticks with leftover drops. My room smells like old library books and the last of Dad's cigarette smoke from when he forgot himself and lit up in the garage. I close my eyes, but the walls are paper, and the words keep leaking in. Not fair to her, Harold. You're not well. I'm fine, Anne. I'm doing better. Dr. Fisher says. I know what Dr. Fisher says. You made sure of that. Mom always brings up Dr. Fisher, like the guy is some kind of prophet. Dad says he's a licensed parasite. I Googled him once, just to see who was winning the argument. He looks like a dentist and wears sweaters even in his headshots. The voices go quiet. For a second, I think I might have fallen asleep, but then the argument moves to the stairwell, closer. Now I can hear them without even trying. Look at you, Mom says. You're falling apart, and you can't admit it. I just want things back the way they were. She laughs, cold and small. Things were never the way you think, Harold. I open my eyes. The ceiling is the same white as a dead screen, glowing with the stupid LED stars I stuck up there in 6th grade. I wish they'd fall down and hit me in the face, just to prove gravity still works. Dad's voice sounds tired. She's my daughter, Anne. I won't let you take her. Mom doesn't answer right away. I imagine her at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, one heel already turned toward the door. She's good at leaving people behind without ever moving her feet. You need to let go, she says. The stairs creak, and I know it's Dad coming up, slow and heavier than last week. Sometimes I pretend not to notice the weight he's put on. Other times, it feels like it's happening to me, too. I roll over, curl up small. The doorknob clicks, but the door doesn't open. Dad just stands there, breathing through his nose, the way he does when he's crying and doesn't want anyone to hear. I wait for the floorboards to give him away, but he stays there for what feels like forever. Then he shuffles off to his own room, the door shutting like the lid on a suitcase. Downstairs, the fridge motor hums to life. Mom's probably staring at her phone, glass of white wine in hand, thumb scrolling through news feeds or other people's lives. She doesn't yell, doesn't slam doors, never even threatens. Instead, she says things like, "You need help," and "We deserve to be happy." And each time it chips away a little more of the house. I hug my pillow, but it doesn't hug back. It's been 2 weeks since Dad made the mac and cheese that got stuck in my braces, and 3 months since Mom bought anything that wasn't a meal kit or a protein bar. There used to be a dog, but after the incident at Christmas, he went to live with Grandma in Tucson. The only thing left is me. If I could pick a side, I would. But I can't. I just want everyone to stop talking like I'm not in the house, like I'm invisible. In the morning, they'll act like nothing happened. Mom will drink green juice and call me sweetheart, with that voice that makes it a multiple-choice question. Dad will mess up my hair and try to make a joke about geometry, but it won't be funny and he'll know it. I close my eyes and think about the dog, the way he used to curl up at the foot of my bed and breathe slow, in and out, like he was timing the world for me. Down the hall, the arguing starts up again. Not louder, just sharper, like two knives trying to carve the same piece of wood. I wonder how long before the house splits in half and which side I'll end up on. Probably neither. The best way to find the truth is to drown in paperwork. Lawyers and liars both know this, which is why they always make sure the trail is at least 3 folders deep and written in a language only the damned would bother to learn. I take the elevator up to my office at 2 a.m., arms full of the files Harold dropped off after our last conversation. The building is mostly empty, just the hum of the Coke machine in the lobby and the dull throb of the city through double-paned glass. I sweep old case notes off my desk, spread out the folders, and start reading. Most of it is boilerplate, invoices, HR complaints, emails about late shipments, and COVID protocols. But I'm not looking for what's normal. I'm looking for the wart on the bride. By hour 2, my eyes are gummy and my head is pounding. That's when I see it. A transfer form from Mason's company moving $100,000 to a holding account I've never heard of. It's dated about a week after Harold says things started getting weird at home. The approval line is signed Annabelle Mason, but the handwriting looks like it was forged by a nervous 6-year-old. I pull out my phone, snap a photo, and text it to a friend on the bank side of things. He owes me a favor from a case last spring when I found his missing dog in a Glendale gambling den. He replies in less than a minute, "Customer ID flagged for fraud. Police report pending. Want the PDF?" I do. The report lands in my inbox. It's bad, like felony bad. The bank flagged the transfer as suspicious, but someone intervened and shut down the inquiry. The report ends with a note. Contacted by legal counsel, investigation suspended. I call the number in the email chain. The line rings once, twice, and then a tired woman's voice answers. I don't give her my name, just ask if she remembers the account. She does. "We were told to drop it," she says. "Lawyer was very clear. No further questions." "Who signed the lawyer's letter?" I ask. Pause. "Victor Novak, from Novak Consulting." I thank her, hang up, and stare at the wall for a while. It all makes sense in a way that leaves you wishing it didn't. Novak's not just Anne's secret, he's her exit strategy. Blackmail, fraud, leverage for the custody battle. Maybe even a setup to put Harold in jail. Or worse. I pour myself another cup of coffee, this one so stale it tastes like carbon paper. I leaf through the rest of the forms and find 3 more transfers, each one with a fake Anne signature, each one flagged by the bank and then swept under the rug. I jot a note. Anne laundering through Harold, Novak the bagman, daughter the leverage. It's never about the affair, that's just the wallpaper. The real house is built from the money. I shoot Harold a text. "Need to talk. Urgent." I don't expect an answer at this hour, but the dots start dancing right away. He's awake. I meet him in the parking lot behind my building under a busted street lamp that buzzes like a bug zapper. He's wearing the same coat as before, only now it looks like he's been sleeping in it. "You found something," he says. Not a question. I hand him the printouts. "She's been moving money out of your accounts for months. Victor's the go-between. He's got connections at the bank." Harold reads, lips moving silently. The pages shake in his hands. She told me we were broke, that she was using her savings to keep us afloat." "She's using you," I say, "and she's about to make it look like you're the one stealing." He rubs his eyes. "This is a crime, real crime, not just divorce." Yeah, and she's got the lawyer lined up to make it stick. He slumps against the Corolla's hood. What do I do? You fight dirty, I say. Same as her. I lay out the plan. Expose the fraud, get the bank's real records, use them in court, get ahead of the story before she can finish rewriting it. Harold listens, nods, then surprises me. Do you ever get tired of this? Every day, I say, but someone has to be the last honest man, even if he's not very good at it. He almost laughs. Thank you, Riley. I shake his hand. Don't thank me yet. The city is quiet as I walk back to my office. I look up at the clouds, hanging low and black, and wonder how long before they let loose again. Inside, I find an envelope slipped under my door. No name, just a single sheet of paper with a typed message. You're in over your head. Walk away. This time, I laugh. If they wanted me scared, they should have tried before I was born. On Fridays, the courthouse smells like wet paper and last-ditch prayers. I hate the place. Too many memories of handcuffs, false promises, and the unique stink of institutional air freshener. I park at the far end of the lot because I know I'll need time to steel myself before going in. I'm here early, but not early enough. Ann Mason's black sedan is already angled perfectly into the best spot, her vanity plate gleaming through a layer of city grit. I hang back, wait for her to make the first move. She doesn't disappoint. 2 minutes later, she emerges, dressed like she's about to win a hostile takeover. Power suit, heels, hair pinned so tight you'd need bolt cutters to free it. She pauses to check her reflection in the window, then heads inside with a stack of folders that would break the wrist of a lesser person. I tail her to the elevators, keeping to the edge of the crowd. Ann's not just meeting a lawyer today. She's got a list. I've seen it before, back when I wore a badge. The slow parade of character witnesses, the co-workers and neighbors and concerned friends who show up to testify that the other parent is a monster. The first on her docket is a high-rise attorney named Cohen, the kind who wears $1,000 loafers and a permatan. I stake out the hallway and watch Ann work him over in the conference room. The glass walls don't block sound, but they do amplify it. I don't need a wiretap. I just need to stand still. Very worried about Julia's safety, Ann is saying, her voice icy but never cruel. Harold's been unstable for years, but lately it's much worse. He's threatened to take her and disappear. Cohen nods, jotting notes with a Mont Blanc. We'll get statements from Julia's teachers, your housekeeper, maybe a neighbor or two. Anyone else? Ann doesn't blink. Her old babysitter and Dr. Fisher. He can confirm Harold's diagnosis. They're building a wall, and Ann's mixing the mortar herself. After the meeting, Cohen leaves and Ann makes 3 calls in a row, all in the same clipped, professional tone. I catch the names: teachers, the therapist, even the guy who delivers groceries. She's not just stacking the deck, she's shuffling it so the ace lands exactly where she wants. I follow her to a Starbucks, where she meets with a woman in yoga pants and an expressionless face. It's the housekeeper, if I'm reading the body language right. Ann slides a folder across the table, the way you might push a bribe in a spy movie. The woman nods, signs something, and leaves. I take a seat in the far corner and nurse a coffee for show. Ann sits alone, scrolling her phone, completely at peace. I wonder if she's even capable of panic. If she is, she's buried it 6 layers down and covered it with concrete. The door chimes, and the next witness enters. It's a man I recognize from the file, Julia's old math tutor. He's nervous, keeps wiping his palms on his slacks. Ann greets him with the same perfect smile, and they dive right in. She was always afraid of being alone with him, Anne says, pitching her voice so it carries. He'd lose his temper. Sometimes she'd cry for hours after. The tutor nods, uncertain, but Anne keeps going, filling in details, sketching a history where Harold is the villain and Julia the eternal victim. It's all rehearsed, but it's not technically a lie, just a rearrangement of facts, seasoned to taste. I text Harold. She's lining up witnesses. They'll paint you as violent, unstable. You need to get ahead of this. He texts back. How? I type. Meet me tonight? The rest of the day I follow Anne from appointment to appointment. She's a machine. By 5 o'clock she's lined up more character witnesses than a mob trial. I spend the evening digging into Cohen's legal strategies, hitting up old contacts in the DA's office and trading rumors for bourbon. By the time the bar closes, I know exactly how Anne plans to play it. I meet Harold at a donut shop that's open 24 hours. He looks like hell, but at least he's sober. She's going nuclear, I say. She'll have affidavits, expert witnesses, maybe even Julia if she can manage it. Harold shakes his head. She wouldn't do that to Julia. She would, I say. She already is. He drinks his coffee, both hands on the cup like it's the last warm thing on earth. I'm not violent, Riley. You know that. I do, I say. But courts don't care what you are, only what you can prove. He looks up. Can you prove I'm not? It's a trick question. No one can prove a negative, not in this world. You're going to have to fight dirty, I say, or at least dirtier than you're used to. He nods, slow, resigned. I lay out the plan. Document every contact with Julia, every time Anne tries to manipulate her. Get Dr. Fisher on record about your progress. Find someone credible to vouch for you, someone Anne can't buy or scare. Harold's hands shake as he makes notes. She wins, doesn't she? Not always, I say, but she's got the head start. We sit in silence, the neon flickering on the formica, the world reduced to two men trying to outlast the storm. On the way out, Harold stops, looks at me. Why do you do this? I think about it. It's the only thing I'm good at. He nods, and I watch him go, wondering if he'll ever see his kid again. I write up the final report, detailing Anne's strategy, the witnesses, the fraud. I send it to Harold's email, CC the lawyer, blind copy myself. Then I close the file, but the uneasy feeling won't let go. Out there, Anne is already planning her next move, and I know this case is far from over. When you're 14, you learn to tell the difference between a normal night and a bad one by the way the house smells. Most nights, it's just old paint and dust. On the bad ones, it smells like sweat and waiting. Tonight, I knew something was wrong before Mom started yelling. It was in the air, thick and wet, pressing the blankets closer to my skin. The clock by my bed said 12:07, the digital numbers burning a migraine into my brain. I was already awake when the first flash of red and blue seeped through my window. The sirens followed, distant at first, then snapping into focus like a slap. I heard Dad's feet hit the floor before I heard Mom's voice. She was calling him names, but the walls made them sound like static. By the time I got to the top of the stairs, the living room was pulsing with police lights, turning Mom and Dad into ghosts that blinked red, then blue, then nothing. Mom's hair was down and wild, her robe not even pretending to cover the pajamas underneath. She was standing by the door, arms crossed so tight she could crack her own ribs. Dad looked even bigger than usual, his bare feet planted on the carpet, old sweatpants sagging under his belly. His face was red, not angry red, but like he'd been caught doing something dirty and wanted to disappear. There were 2 cops on the porch. One was a woman, tall and bony, her badge hanging like a dare on her chest. The other was a guy with a jaw so square it looked like someone pressed his face out of a Play-Doh mold. They didn't come in right away. They made Mom open the door wide, then stood there, writing things in a notebook before they even spoke. Dad didn't say anything. He just stood still, breathing heavy. I pressed my forehead to the banister and watched, hoping no one would notice me. "Mr. Mason," the woman cop said, "all business. Mind if we come in?" Dad shrugged, then nodded. The cops stepped inside, shoes on, tracking rain and lawn clippings onto the rug. They didn't apologize. "What seems to be the issue tonight?" the guy asked. His eyes scanned the room, landing on me for just a second before going back to Mom. Mom started talking. Fast. "He threatened me," she said. "He got angry and said he was taking Julia, and I'd never see her again." She said it in that voice she used on teachers, the one that made her sound reasonable and everyone else sound crazy. Dad shook his head, but he didn't argue. He just mumbled, "I never said that," which made him sound even guiltier. The cops asked if I was okay. I said yes, even though I wasn't sure what they were really asking. The woman took notes, never looking up. The guy asked if I wanted to go wait somewhere else, maybe in my room. I told him I was fine. They started doing their cop thing. Questions, slow and repetitive, like they thought if they asked enough times the answers would be different. Had Dad been drinking? No, just Dr. Pepper and whatever was left of his self-respect. Had he ever hurt me or Mom? No, never. Not even when I broke Grandma's vase or called him fat in front of my friends. Did I feel safe with him? Yes, I said, but my voice cracked, and I don't think he believed me. Mom kept her arms crossed, but her lips twitched every time Dad had to repeat himself. She was winning, and she knew it. Dad's eyes kept darting from the cops to me, like he was searching for some secret code I could give him to make this all go away. I didn't have one. After a while, the cops asked Mom if she wanted to file a report. She said, "I just want it on record," which I guess is divorce speak for "I'm playing the long game." They gave Dad a warning, said if there was another call he'd have to leave the house, maybe spend the night in jail. The whole time, no one ever raised their voice. No one cried. The only sound was the radio on the woman's shoulder, squawking about some drunk guy on the other side of town. When they left, Mom went straight to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of wine, then another, and didn't say a word. Dad sat down on the bottom stair, hands hanging between his knees, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. I wanted to go back to my room, but I couldn't move. I just watched him, and he watched me, and for a second I thought he might say something real, something that would explain how a regular Tuesday night could end up like this. But he didn't. I heard Mom's voice from the kitchen, sharp and flat. "Go to bed, Julia." I did, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, counting the flashes of red and blue still echoing behind my eyelids, trying to remember the last time I felt safe in my own house. It had been a while. My apartment is 3 flights above a pawn shop that deals in bad decisions. The place smells like fried food and the memories people tried to sell for cash. Tonight, I sat at the kitchen table, sorting through surveillance photos and other people's secrets, when my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered on instinct. "Riley Hunt?" The voice was tinny, high-pitched, genderless, like a bad radio signal on a stormy night. "Who's asking?" I said. "You need to drop the Mason job, now." The line went dead. Classic. No threats, just a warning. That's how you know it's serious. I looked at the phone for a long minute, then put it down next to the half-eaten pizza and poured myself another 2 fingers of bottom-shelf bourbon. I tried to laugh it off, but the feeling stuck with me. Someone had gone to the trouble of getting my number, and that meant my name was in circulation again. Never a good sign. I closed the blinds, checked the locks, and killed the kitchen light. Then I waited. If someone wanted to rattle me, I'd let them, but I didn't give free shows. I washed down the bourbon, pocketed my keys, and took the back stairs down to the alley. It was still raining, but lighter now, the drops, fat and lazy, pooling on the cracked asphalt. I scanned the parking lot, 2 cars, both empty. The pawn shop's neon "Open Late" sign flickered, spitting pink light on the puddles. The only other movement was the neighbor's cat prowling for rats. I circled the block anyway, letting the cold, wet air clear my head. The feeling didn't leave. If anything, it sharpened. Every time a headlight swept the curb, every time I caught a shape moving in a window, my gut clenched like it knew something I didn't. Back upstairs, I dumped the pizza in the trash and rinsed out the glass. I checked the peephole 3 times before bed, then wedged a folding chair under the knob for good measure. At 3:18 a.m., I woke up in the dark, heart thumping, the old cop's 6th sense screaming at me. It was nothing, of course. No footsteps, no voices, just the tick of the fridge and the low hum of the city outside. I went to the window and peered through the blinds. Across the street, under the busted street lamp, a car sat with the engine running. Black sedan, windows tinted, too new for the neighborhood. It wasn't there earlier. I stared at it. It stared back. I stood there for a solid 10 minutes. The car never moved. Eventually I let the blinds fall, sat on the edge of the bed, and tried to remember if I'd ever actually been scared before. Maybe back when I wore a badge, first couple of months on the force. Or maybe it was just another flavor of the old familiar dread, the one that keeps you awake when you know there's something bad waiting on the other side of morning. Eventually, the engine noise faded. I watched the taillights drift off down the block, slow and steady, like whoever was inside wanted me to see. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I spent the next morning on coffee and autopilot, watching the street from behind a newspaper I hadn't paid for. The black sedan was gone, but I didn't buy the coincidence. The city never let go that easy. By noon, the drizzle let up, and with it, my chances of blending in. I had to move. I knew Victor's pattern by now. He liked the same 3 lunch spots, always sat with his back to a wall, never ordered the same thing twice. He was careful, but not careful enough. I caught up with him at a Cuban place on Flagler, the kind of joint where the plantains taste like heaven, but the service is a dare. He came in alone, but I gave it 20 minutes. Sure enough, a woman arrived. Tall, athletic, the kind of confidence that comes from winning things people never bother to keep score on. Her hair was cut short, her eyes hard and cold. She sat across from Victor and didn't waste time with small talk. I took a seat 3 booths over, next to the pinball machine that hadn't worked since 2005. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and pretended to read the sports page. Every so often I snuck a glance at Victor and his guest. No touching, no smiles. This wasn't romance, it was business, maybe blackmail, maybe worse. They talked for 15 minutes, voices too low for me to catch a word. Then Victor slid her a folder, manila, thick with papers. She took it, thumbed through the contents, then tucked it into her purse. Victor stood, nodded once, and left without a backward glance. The woman stayed. She sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, her face an icicle. I waited until she paid the bill and left, then counted to 10 before following. She walked 3 blocks east, cutting through a busy park and around a construction zone. I trailed at a distance, matching her stride, keeping to the shadows when I could. She never looked back, but I knew she'd spotted me. No one who moved like that missed a tail. She ducked into a bakery on a side street. I waited outside, trying not to look like a creep, but probably failing. She emerged 10 minutes later, carrying a paper sack and a disposable cup. She walked right up to me and held out the bag. "You want one?" she said. Her accent was faint, Eastern European, but her English was better than mine. "Depends what's in it," I said. She shrugged. "It's a donut. You're following me. Eat something." I took the bag. It was warm, glazed, smelled like a childhood I never had. "I'm not a cop," I said, just to get it out of the way. "Good," she said. "Cops are boring. At least you have style." She sipped her coffee and started walking again. I kept up. We found a bench near the water. She sat, crossed her legs, and didn't offer her name. "You know who he is?" she asked. "Victor Novak, and you're—" She shook her head. "Names don't matter, not anymore." I ate the donut, mostly for show. "You two looked cozy back there." She laughed, a sharp sound with no humor in it. "You think he's my boyfriend?" "I think he's your problem." This time her smile was real, but small. "He was. Not anymore. Today is the last meeting." I looked at the bag in my lap, then at her. "You want to tell me why you're meeting a guy like that in broad daylight? Passing folders?" She stared out at the water. "He said if I didn't pay, he'd ruin me. Photos, emails, things from when I was young and stupid." She shook her head. "It doesn't even matter if it's true. People believe what they want." "Let me guess, he wanted money or favors." "Both," she said. "I paid." "Then he wanted more. He always wants more." "Why are you telling me this?" She shrugged. "You're the first person who followed me and didn't try to scare me, so maybe you're not a total asshole." I snorted. "That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me this week." She finished her coffee, crushed the cup in her hand. "He's dangerous. You know that, right?" "I figured," I said, "but I like a challenge." She turned, finally meeting my eyes. "He's not just a thug. He's smart. He knows how to find people's weak spots." I made a note of that. "What did he use on you?" She hesitated. "Photos. From before. Back in Kiev. I thought I left all that behind." She shrugged again. "Guess I was wrong." "Why'd you meet him today?" "He said it was the last time," she said. "He gave me the folder. Told me I was free to go." She laughed again, dry as dust. "But I know better. There's always a next time with men like him." I nodded. "Mind if I ask what's in the folder?" She pulled it from her purse and tossed it to me. I flipped through it. Copies of old passports, bank statements, some blurry Polaroids. Most of it was junk, scare tactics. But a couple of the documents looked real. Immigration stuff. The kind that could wreck a life. "Can I keep this?" I asked. She nodded. "It's all fake anyway." We sat in silence for a while. I finished the donut, licked the sugar off my fingers. "Why are you following him?" she asked. "Because he's ruining someone else's life now," I said, "and I'm getting paid to stop it." She snorted. "You think you can stop him?" I thought about it. "I don't know, but I have to try." She stood, stretched, and looked down at me. "Don't get killed." "I'll put it on the list." She walked off, and I watched her go, wishing I had something better to say. I thumbed through the folder again, then tucked it into my jacket. I made my way back to the Corolla, mind replaying the conversation, searching for angles. The whole way home, I kept an eye on my mirrors. The paranoia was back, but now it had teeth. Upstairs, I dumped the contents of the folder onto the table, sorted through the crap. I found a business card wedged between two bank statements, slick, glossy, embossed with a gold logo. Sandoval Associates. I recognized the name from a case 3 years back. High-end consulting for people with more money than conscience. Back then, a woman hired me to find her missing sister. Turns out the sister had been working for Sandoval, blackmailing clients and running off with their secrets. I found her body in a canal, her phone smashed to bits, the SIM card gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the card. The world was full of people like Victor. Most of them never got what was coming to them. I called the number on the card. It rang twice. Then a silky voice answered, "Sandoval Associates." I didn't speak, just listened to the silence on the other end. After a few seconds, the line went dead. That's when I realized I wasn't hunting Victor. I was being herded. I poured another drink and watched the city burn through the rain. Nothing in Miami draws a better crowd of liars and freeloaders than a downtown coffee shop at rush hour. If you stand in line long enough, you'll see every side hustle and hustle-adjacent species known to man. So when Ann Mason picked the perch, 12 blocks from the courthouse, swank interior, world's worst acoustic tile, I wasn't surprised. You pick a place like that for 2 reasons: visibility and deniability. I went early and took the window seat, my back to the glass, my eyes on the door. The latte I ordered cost more than my haircut, but I let it go. Some things are worth paying for. Anne showed right on time, dressed for war. Navy sheath dress, hair like a helmet, sunglasses big enough to land a plane on. She carried a white file box with a sticky note label, "Affidavits." Her lawyer arrived next, a guy named Cohen, rumored to bill by the syllable. He looked like he'd been carved from a block of something expensive and bland. They took the table farthest from the door and set the box between them like a bomb. Cohen pulled out a legal pad, Anne uncapped a pen, and together they scanned the room. I kept my head down, let them think I was just another lonely loser on his 4th espresso. Within 10 minutes, the witnesses started showing. First was a young woman with acne scars and a nervous tic. She wore gym clothes and kept glancing at the clock on her phone. Cohen greeted her with a handshake and a brand-new folder, which she opened and signed without reading. The next guy was older, beefy, ex-military type. He didn't sit, just hovered over the table until Cohen slipped him a business card and a crisp envelope. He left as quickly as he came. By the time the 3rd and 4th witnesses arrived, a teacher and a housekeeper, if I read their uniforms right, I had a dozen pictures on my phone. Every handshake, every envelope, every staged expression of regret. I even caught Anne peeling off a few 20s and slipping them under her saucer for the yoga girl. I kept a running tally. 4 witnesses, 3 signed statements, 2 wads of cash. The show ran like clockwork. I saw what I needed, but I waited for the encore. It came just before noon. Cohen packed up the box, handed Anne a final manila envelope, and left with a brisk wave. Anne lingered, staring into her empty coffee cup for a long time. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, but the deep, hollow fatigue of someone who's spent weeks setting a trap and knows the only way out is through. She glanced up and caught me looking. For a split second, her eyes went wide, then narrowed. I tipped my cup to her in salute, then went back to my phone. She left without a word. I waited 5 minutes, paid my tab, and followed. She was already out of sight, but I knew where she'd be going. Her car, parked illegally in the loading zone. I caught her just as she was closing the trunk. "Afternoon, Anne," I said, loud enough to echo off the parking garage walls. She turned, lips tight. "Mr. Hunt, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I showed her the phone, thumbed through the pictures. "You should smile more. It's for posterity." She didn't flinch. "You're wasting your time. No one cares what a washed-up PI thinks." "Maybe, I said. "But the court might care about perjury." She laughed, brittle. "You really don't understand how this works, do you?" I shrugged. "I've got time to learn." She slammed the trunk and got in the car, eyes forward. Engine started, exhaust curling white in the humid air. As she pulled out, I caught my own reflection in her rearview mirror. For a second, I saw myself the way she did, a relic, a professional ruin, clinging to the last scraps of someone else's dignity. I took another picture just in case. Then I walked home, feeling like the only honest man in a city built on lies. After the police came, Mom started sleeping in the guest room. The house didn't get quieter, it just changed key. Most nights, I holed up in my room, headphones in, lights off, counting the cracks in the ceiling. The space was supposed to be mine, but now it felt like a holding cell. Dad's stuff was all in the garage, and the air in the hallway was too thick to breathe. Tonight, the fight started before dinner. I could hear Mom's voice, sharp and bright, carrying up the stairs even with the door closed. Dad kept it low, muttering his comebacks, but every once in a while he'd say something loud enough to shatter the floorboards. I lay on my bed, staring at my phone, thumb hovering over the Messages app. I thought about texting Grandma, but she always sided with Dad, even when he was wrong. I settled for Kara instead. "Hey, you up?" I waited. The house went silent for a minute, like it was holding its breath. Then the yelling started again. Kara replied, "Always." "What's up?" IDK. "Parents fighting again. Ugh. Want to come over?" "Can't. Dad says I have to stay home this week. That sucks." "What are they fighting about?" "Me, I think. Custody stuff, Omingji." "Do you want to talk?" I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to talk, but not to anyone who could fix it. I just wanted someone to listen. "I'm fine, LOL liar. Want memes or gossip?" "Both." A second later, Kara started spamming cat videos and screenshots of group chats from school. It helped, a little. I let the videos loop on silent, tried to pretend I was somewhere else. Anywhere else. From downstairs, a door slammed. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Dad, probably. I could tell by the rhythm, heavy, then soft, like he was trying not to scare me. I heard him stop outside my door. He didn't knock, just stood there. The silence was worse than the yelling. Eventually, I heard him shuffle back to his own room. The door clicked shut. I texted Kara. "Thanks." She sent a heart emoji. No questions, just that. I set the phone on my chest and closed my eyes. I could still hear the faint echoes of the fight, but they sounded farther away now, like maybe they were happening in a different house to a different girl. For a few seconds, I almost believed it. By Thursday morning, my office looked like the FBI's evidence room after a tornado. Photos taped to the wall, Post-its blooming from every surface, 3 separate laptops all running at once. The heat was off again, so I worked in fingerless gloves and 3 layers of shirts. I kept the coffee coming, switching to black tea when my stomach threatened a revolt. I'd spent the night cataloging everything. The bank transfers, the witness list, the digital trail of emails Anne thought she'd deleted. I had surveillance stills of Cohen and his parade of professional testifiers, screenshots of Victor's texts, even the snarky Donut Girl's testimony about his M.O. When I stacked the evidence, the story was so obvious it almost felt like cheating. But obvious doesn't win in family court. You have to show your work, then hope the judge is in a good mood. At 9 sharp, Harold showed up with a box of bear claws and a look that said he hadn't slept since the police visit. He set the pastry box on the only clean spot on my desk and looked around the room, trying to piece it all together. "You been busy," he said. "Always am," I said. "Sit." He perched on the edge of the client chair, hands clasped between his knees. I pushed a folder across the desk, my report thick and brutal. "Read this, twice. Don't skip anything." He started in, lips moving as he followed the lines. I watched him flinch at the signed affidavits, the witness bribes, the photos of Anne meeting with Cohen. When he hit the bank records, he stopped cold. "She took out a second mortgage?" he said, voice flat. I nodded, transferred most of it to a holding account, then laundered it through a shell company using Novak as her bagman. "That's who's been threatening you, by the way." He set the report down, stared at his hands. "What do I do?" he asked. I rolled my chair closer, leaned in. "You go to court, calmly and politely, and let the judge see the pattern. I'll get the bank manager to testify, and maybe Donut Girl if we need corroboration on Novak's methods. You keep it simple. You're a dad, you want your kid, and you're not the one running scams. Let Anne be the one who gets rattled." He looked up, eyes watery. "Will that be enough?" "Maybe," I said, "but it's your best shot. If you panic or start a fight, she'll use it to bury you." He nodded, wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Thank you, Riley. I mean it." I almost laughed, but it came out as a cough. "Don't thank me. I just hate to see a good kid get wrecked because two grown-ups forgot how to lose with dignity." We spent the next hour rehearsing the facts. I played the judge, the lawyer, even Anne when I had to. I went hard, asked about his finances, his mental health, every weak spot I could find. By the end, Harold was sweating, but he didn't flinch. When he left, I packed the evidence into a battered briefcase and stared at it for a long time. All that work, all that proof, and still no guarantee of anything. The system liked its martyrs rare and well documented. I poured a cup of cold coffee and stepped outside for a cigarette. The city felt slow and heavy, like it was waiting for the next shoe to drop. I thought about Julia, how she'd taken the news, if she'd even been told. I hoped she'd land on her feet. Some kids do. From the street, I watched Anne's lawyer get into a car across the way. He started the engine but didn't pull out. Just sat there, hands on the wheel, face unreadable. I finished the smoke, went back inside, and started drafting my affidavit. If the court wanted a story, I'd give them a good one. All the while, I kept an eye on the clock, counting the hours until it was my turn to testify. I never sleep the night before a hearing. I spent the small hours pacing my apartment, running the case over in my mind. Sometimes I watched the street, sometimes I stared at the walls, sometimes I just lay on the floor with the lights off, listening to the city tick and hiss. The folder with my affidavit sat on the coffee table, daring me to screw it up. Around 2, I poured the last of the bourbon and stood at the window watching the street. The rain had stopped, but the world was still dripping. In the yellow cone of the street lamp, I saw a car parked at the curb. Black sedan, engine running, headlights off. My heart rate barely moved. It was the same model that trailed me before. I let the curtain fall, went to the kitchen, and waited. The refrigerator kicked on, then off. My neighbor coughed through the wall. Somewhere, a siren wailed, then died. When I checked the window again, the car was closer, pulled up right outside, front wheels hugging the curb. This time the headlights blinked on, high beams punching through the glass, turning my apartment into a stage set. I ducked back, out of sight. The light clicked off and I heard the car door open. I didn't have a weapon, but I grabbed the tire iron from behind the bathroom door. I waited by the peephole, breath slow and shallow. My hands were steady. I'd been through worse. Footsteps in the hall, slow and even. They stopped at my door. I pressed my eye to the peephole and saw nothing, just darkness. Whoever it was, they knew how to stand off to the side. A minute passed, then 2. I almost convinced myself it was nothing, just nerves and bourbon, when I heard a whisper against the crack of the door. "Riley Hunt? You should have walked away." The voice was calm, flat, no accent. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. Another 30 seconds, then the footsteps faded. I waited until I heard the car engine turn over, watched the taillights glide off into the night. I put the tire iron back, closed the blinds, and sat down at the table. My hands still didn't shake. In the morning, I'd go to court. I'd hand over my file, tell my story, and hope it stuck. But tonight, I realized I wasn't just fighting for Harold or Julia anymore. This was personal. I'd poked the wrong bear, and now someone wanted me to bleed. I poured myself a glass of water and stared into the dark. My reflection looked back, tired and ugly and unafraid. I poured myself a glass of water and stared into the dark. My reflection looked back, tired and ugly and unafraid. This case was far from over. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse parking lot was already full of ghosts. Ex-husbands and future felons, haircuts 3 months out of date, faces sallow with loss or expectation. The rain was down to a trickle, but the whole city felt waterlogged, like every step might dissolve the asphalt and send you sinking straight through to the bedrock. I pulled the Corolla into a space bracketed by a minivan, and an ancient Ford that listed so hard left it might roll over in a strong breeze. Harold was already waiting, hunched under an awning with the collar of his thrift store overcoat up around his ears. I'd told him not to wear anything that looked like he was playing the victim, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Today, he was the one on trial, whether or not the docket said otherwise. I killed the engine and sat for a minute, watching the courthouse steps. The glass and steel facade looked like it was trying too hard to forget the city's actual business. There were plenty of people with umbrellas, and nobody with a smile. I grabbed the battered briefcase from the passenger seat. Inside was every piece of evidence I'd gathered in the past 3 weeks. Photos, bank records, affidavits, even a grainy shot of Anne sliding an envelope to a man I now knew as Victor's errand boy. It wouldn't be enough to win, but it might be enough to stall Anne's plans for a clean getaway. I walked over, letting the drizzle bead on my shoulders. Harold saw me, offered a nod that was more a reflex than a greeting. "You ready?" I said. He stared at the double doors, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I haven't slept since Tuesday." "Good. Neither has your lawyer." He managed to sound somewhere between a chuckle and a cough. "You think it matters?" "Everything matters," I said. "Especially the things that look like they don't." He checked his watch, then the steps again, like he was waiting for a last-minute pardon. "You think she'll bring Julia today?" "She has to," I said. "Optics." He rubbed at his jaw. "I don't want her to see me like this." "Kids always know," I said. "Doesn't matter what you try to hide." A lull in the rain, then the doors hissed open, and the day's first crowd trickled out. Another group already processed, ready to go back to pretending they had something left to lose. Anne arrived at 8:57 sharp. She came up the steps flanked by Cohen and a woman in a navy suit, probably a paralegal or a professional witness. Anne's hair was perfect, not a strand out of place, and she wore a scarf so violently white it hurt to look at in the gray morning. She didn't see us at first. Her face was all business, jaw set and mouth painted into a color that only exists in divorce brochures. But when she did, she stopped and squared up, the way you might if you suddenly found yourself standing opposite a snake you'd hoped was dead. Cohen leaned in, whispered something, and Anne's face smoothed out. She nodded once, then led her squad inside. I watched them disappear through security, the metal detector beeping like a hospital monitor. "She's running scared," I said, just for Harold's benefit. He shook his head. "You don't know her." "I know what people look like when they're about to lose something," I said. "Trust me." The security line was longer than usual. Inside, the lobby was a hive of umbrellas and body heat. The air smelled like wet wool, coffee, and the stale tang of municipal cleaning fluid. I let Harold go ahead, then waited while the guard eyed my briefcase like it might bite him. Courtroom 4B was up 2 flights and to the right. The hallway outside was lined with plastic benches, all occupied by the desperate and the doomed. Harold's lawyer, a woman named Linda, with eyes the color of battery acid, waited by the door, flipping through a binder and drinking coffee out of a chipped thermos. She saw us, jerked her chin at Harold. "You sober?" He nodded. "Good. Sit there. Don't talk." "Riley, you got the paperwork?" I handed her the folder. She scanned the first page, eyebrows climbing. "You really think this'll stick?" "It's not about sticking," I said. "It's about showing they're dirtier than us." She smirked. "That's a low bar." I shrugged. "You're the one with the law degree." She glanced at the clock, then leaned in close, her voice gone gravelly. "Their side's stacked. Judges got a rep for favoring stable environments. If you want to do any good, you'd better pray Anne overplays her hand." "Got it," I said. She turned to Harold. "Julia's here. I saw her come in with Anne. She's in the witness room, prepping with the child advocate." Harold paled. "She won't have to testify, right?" Linda shook her head. "Not unless the judge orders it, but if you lose your cool in there, she will." Harold sat, arms crossed, staring at the floor tiles. I took the seat next to him, let the silence stretch. The bailiff opened the door at exactly 9:30. "Mason v. is Mason?" Anne and Cohen swept in first, their posture perfect. I caught a glimpse of Anne's hand shaking as she unclipped her purse. She caught me looking, and for a split second I saw the old Anne, the one from the family photo on Harold's phone, smiling for real, before she decided the world owed her more than she had. Linda led us to the respondents' table, every move deliberate. There was a stack of evidence on our side and a slightly larger stack on theirs. I recognized some of the exhibits, printouts of my own emails, even a photo of me parked outside Anne's house. Cohen was nothing if not thorough. The judge entered, and the room went silent except for the click of her heels on the vinyl tile. She looked like every judge I'd ever seen, small, neat, and radiating the kind of boredom that comes from decades of sorting the same 5 flavors of human wreckage. She called the case, then eyeballed each party like she was picking out cuts at a butcher counter. "Who's first?" Cohen stood, all confidence and courtesy. "Petitioner, Your Honor." Anne kept her gaze locked on the table, lips pressed thin. She wore her sadness like a badge, but the way her foot tapped under the table gave her away. Nerves. Linda went second, launching into a counter-narrative about Harold's work history, his ties to Julia, his spotless record except for a few minor traffic tickets. It was all window dressing for the real show, which would come when the evidence started to land. The first half hour was all posturing, statements, objections, the usual back and forth. Anne's side called 3 witnesses in quick succession: the yoga girl, the ex-military neighbor, and the housekeeper. All of them painted Harold as a ticking time bomb, prone to outbursts, erratic behavior, and potentially dangerous instability. The judge listened, unmoved, fingers steepled in front of her face. Then came the bankers. Cohen put on a show, producing records of suspicious transfers, highlighting every instance where Harold's signature was inconsistent, It would have been impressive if I didn't already know the punchline. My turn came sooner than expected. Linda called me to the stand, and I felt every eye in the room as I walked up. Cohen's look was smug. He figured I'd get tossed on credibility, but Linda's play was smarter than that. She started slow, asking about my background, my experience as a PI, and the circumstances of my hiring. I answered in the same tone I used for traffic stops, flat, respectful, a little bored. Then she hit the real questions. Did you observe any interactions between Ann Mason and individuals other than her husband during your investigation? I did. Who? A man named Victor Novak and several associates. I have photographic evidence. I nodded at the judge. It's in the file. She pressed on. Did you uncover any evidence of fraudulent activity pertaining to the accounts in question? Yes. I explained step by step how the transfers had been orchestrated, how Ann and Novak were using shell companies to siphon funds, how the bank manager had been pressured to suppress the initial fraud report. Cohen tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Let him finish. Linda leaned in. Were any of these activities linked to Harold Mason? No, I said. If anything, they were designed to implicate him. That got a reaction. Ann's lips tightened, and Cohen's eyes flicked to his notes, searching for a way to pivot. When Linda finished, Cohen came at me hard, tried to paint me as a disgraced ex-cop with an axe to grind. I didn't rise to it, just kept my answers short and stuck to what could be proven. When it was over, I felt like I'd spent an hour in the sun with my eyes wide open. I walked back to my seat, glancing once at Ann. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the table, jaw clenched so tight I wondered if she'd ever be able to unclench it again. Across the aisle, Harold hadn't moved, but I saw his hands relax, just a little, on the arms of his chair. At the front of the gallery, Julia sat between two court officials, her back straight and her face set. She looked older than her 14 years, and more tired than either of her parents. There was an empty chair at the petitioner's table, a tented card with Mr. Novak written on it, but the man himself never showed. The judge called a recess, and the room emptied into the hallway, every player dragging their own personal storm cloud. I stood by the door, watching the crowd. Ann disappeared into a conference room with Cohen and her witnesses. Harold wandered over to Julia, who gave him a small, sad smile. He said something, she nodded, and the moment passed. Outside, the rain started up again. I watched it run down the windows, turning the city into a waterlogged painting. In less than an hour, the judge would decide if any of this mattered. I went to the restroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at the cracked mirror. I didn't look like a hero or even a particularly good person, just another ghost in the courthouse, hoping for a little justice and a dry ride home. When I got back to the gallery, Harold and Julia were still there. She was talking now, her words small but insistent. Harold just listened, one hand on her shoulder, the other clenched in his lap. At the front of the courtroom, Ann was alone. Cohen and the paralegal were arguing with a bailiff over some last-minute paperwork, and the witnesses were long gone. She looked lost, her composure frayed at the edges. I checked my watch. 20 minutes to go. I settled into a bench, let the white noise of the building wash over me. The voices, the footsteps, the shuffling of paper, all of it blurred into a single anxious hum. That's when I saw the flash of movement at the far end of the hall. A man, tall and broad, head-shaved, jaw set like a slab of granite. He wore a suit that didn't fit and sunglasses despite the clouds. For a second I thought it might be Victor, come to collect. But the walk was wrong, too stiff, too wary. Not a predator, just another paid witness, or maybe a last-minute favor for Cohen. I scanned the corridor, but there was no sign of the real thing. Novak had vanished. Maybe he was never meant to show. Maybe Anne had decided that throwing her only lifeline was better than dragging him down with her. The bailiff called the case back to order. People filtered in, took their places, and the judge returned, her expression unchanged. "Is Mr. Novak present?" she asked. Cohen cleared his throat. "He is not, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "Very well. Let's proceed." I looked at Harold, who looked at Julia, who looked straight ahead. The rest would be up to the court. The next half hour was the slow burn of open court. Attorneys talking in circles, the judge slicing through it with a gavel, and the patience of a homicide coroner. Cohen took his time with the evidence, doing his best to paint the financial records as a tragic misunderstanding. Unorthodox, yes, but not criminal. I recognized the tactic. Minimize the offense, pivot to character, drown the whole thing in the smell of respectable family squabble. Linda let him walk right into her trap, then delivered the final blow. "Your Honor, the transfers in question were not only unauthorized, but deliberately concealed from Mr. Mason until after the dissolution of the marriage was underway." Cohen: "Objection. Mischaracterizes the intent." Judge: "Overruled. Intent is for me to determine." Linda: "Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Hunt back to the stand." I got the nod. My palms were dry. I'd sweated all that out before sunrise. Linda laid out the exhibits one by one, photocopies, screen grabs, even the donut receipt from the bakery where Victor's last known associate tried to launder a wire transfer with $200 in cash and a fake driver's license. She let me explain each, never interrupting. When she finished, she walked it back to the point. "And in your professional opinion, who stood to benefit from these transactions?" I didn't even look at Anne. "Annabelle Mason and her agent, Victor Novak." Cohen tried to object again, but the judge just stared him down. Linda let it breathe. "And the implication for Mr. Mason?" I answered. "He'd be on the hook for both the financial liability and the criminal case, if it ever got prosecuted. He'd lose custody and probably never see his daughter again." The room went quiet. Cohen stood, stiff as a corpse. "Mr. Hunt, you were discharged from the police force for—" "Remind me?" I saw where it was going. "For refusing to alter evidence in a departmental case. I resigned, Mr. Cohen. No charges," he sneered. "So, you have a vendetta?" "Only against liars," I said. He smiled, but it was the kind you get from a man who's already lost the bet. "Do you have any direct evidence linking my client to this supposed fraud?" "Only the money trail, the emails, the witness statements, and the fact that Victor Novak didn't show up today even though he was subpoenaed." I shrugged. "Not much, I guess." There was laughter in the gallery, the brittle kind that cracks under pressure. Cohen tried to pivot. "You're aware that Mr. Novak is an international business consultant and travels frequently?" Linda cut in before the judge could. If he's so important, why is he listed as a character witness and then fails to appear?" Cohen ignored her. No further questions. Linda just raised her eyebrow at the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit the full file into evidence." "So ordered," said the judge, "pending authentication by the court clerk." She turned to me. "Mr. Hunt, please be available for further questioning should the need arise." I nodded and stepped down. As I passed the petitioner's table, Anne's face was a mask. No emotion, no movement. But her knuckles were bone white, nails gouging half-moons into the desk. Julia watched all of it, her expression unreadable. 14 is an age where the world loses its magic, but today She looked like she'd seen this ending 1,000 times. The judge called a recess, and this time the gallery emptied like someone had pulled a fire alarm. I stood in the hallway watching Anne pace between two security guards, lips moving but no sound. Cohen tried to comfort her, but she shrugged him off. The paralegal was already on the phone, probably calling the next witness in line. Harold and Julia sat on a bench by the vending machines. They didn't talk, just shared a silence that was part relief, part aftershock. I got a coffee, watched the rain bead on the glass. Every so often I'd catch a reflection, the bailiff, the janitor, a lawyer I'd seen on a billboard once, and for a second it looked like the whole city was stuck in this hallway, waiting for a verdict. The break lasted 20 minutes. When the bailiff called us back in, the room felt smaller, air thick with the damp of too many wet coats and not enough hope. The judge wasted no time. "Mr. Mason, please take the stand." Harold went up, hands steady but voice thin. Linda walked him through the events of the past year, his job loss, the downward spiral, the moment he realized Anne was setting him up. She let him talk about Julia, about the mornings they spent together, the books they read, the jokes no one else understood. Linda asked him nothing about the money, the fraud, or the accusations. She just let him be a father. Cohen's cross was mercifully brief. He tried to rattle Harold with questions about his mental health, his emotional instability, but Harold never broke. Every answer was soft, measured. He even smiled once. When it was Julia's turn, I expected a fight. Instead, she walked up, sat straight, and answered every question with a kind of quiet certainty that made the whole room lean in. She talked about both parents, their strengths and their failures. She never said Anne was a bad mother, but she didn't have to. Linda asked one final question. "Julia, if you could choose, what would you want?" Julia looked at the judge. "I want to stay with my dad, but I don't want to lose my mom either." It wasn't a Hollywood ending, but it was the only answer that mattered. The judge thanked her, then called the lawyers up for a sidebar. I watched Anne. She kept her head down, hands folded, every muscle clenched so tight I thought she might break in half. The judge came back, and her decision took all of 90 seconds. "Pending further review of the evidence, I am granting temporary joint custody to Mr. Mason with monitored visits for Mrs. Mason pending investigation of the financial records and the allegations of witness tampering. I will refer the matter of possible fraud to the district attorney." Cohen tried to object, but the judge didn't even look at him. Harold didn't move, but I saw his breath catch. Julia squeezed his hand. Anne just stared at the table, like if she looked up the whole thing would vanish. I collected my briefcase and walked out, ignoring the glares from Cohen and his paralegal. In the hallway, Harold and Julia were already gone. I found them outside, standing under the awning. The rain had picked up again, heavier now. Harold had his arm around Julia's shoulders, and she leaned into him, eyes shut. Anne came out 10 minutes later. She didn't look at them, or me, just walked to her car and drove off. Cohen stood in the doorway, his suit already soaked, and lit a cigarette. He watched the Masons for a while, then shook his head and left. I leaned against the wall and let the rain pelt my face. For once it felt clean. Inside, the world kept grinding on, cases, hearings, 100 little tragedies played out by people who never stood a chance. But for now, at least, the ghosts in the parking lot had thinned out, and the city felt almost alive again. The day's last round was always the most brutal. Like prize fights, custody battles didn't end on a knockout. You just kept swinging until someone couldn't get up anymore. After the lunch break, the judge called the bank manager. He was the kind of guy who'd gone bald early, but wore it like a badge. glasses perched on his nose, suit pressed so tight you could see the outline of his gym membership. He took the stand with the solemnity of a funeral director. Linda handled him with silk gloves. "Mr. Harbison, you're familiar with the accounts in question." "Yes, ma'am." "Would you please walk us through the flagged transactions?" He did, line by line, referencing the records I'd dug up and the ones Anne's side tried to bury. Each time Anne's name appeared, Harbison's voice got a little softer, like he was sorry for her but sorrier for himself. "Linda, did you ever receive pressure from any outside party to suppress or delay investigation into these accounts?" Harbison hesitated. "Yes, I did." "From whom?" He glanced at Anne, then at Cohen. "A consultant representing Ms. Mason." "Linda, and that would be—" Harbison cleared his throat. "Victor Novak." Even the judge took notes. Cohen's cross was pathetic. He tried to trip Harbison on technicalities, but the guy just stuck to the facts. By the end, Cohen looked like he wished the ground would swallow him. The next witness was the donut woman. Tatiana, her name tag said, but I remembered her better for the way she'd handed over a bag of pastries and a pocket of bad luck. She was nervous, hands trembling as she unfolded the subpoena. Linda made it easy. "Tatiana, can you tell the court about your interaction with Ms. Mason's associate?" She looked around, eyes darting. "He came in, asked for a box of donuts, paid with $100 bill. He left the folder on the table, told me to throw it away." Linda: "Did you?" "No, I looked inside, saw it was bank stuff. I called the number on the letterhead, like my manager said." Linda: "And that's when you spoke to me?" Tatiana nodded, clutching the sides of the witness box. Cohen tried to discredit her, but all he did was make her cry. The judge shut it down, told the court reporter to mark the tears on the record. Cohen sat, defeated. After that, it was time for Julia. She walked up slow, her shoes barely making a sound. The bailiff showed her how to swear in, and she did it with a voice so even it made everyone else's nerves stand out like a rash. Linda kept the questions gentle. "Julia, do you know why we're here?" She nodded. "To decide who I live with." Linda: "Do you love your parents?" "Yes." Linda: "Do you feel safe with your father?" "Yes, always." Linda: "Has he ever hurt you or threatened you?" Julia blinked. "No, never." Linda: "And your mother?" A pause. "She gets mad. Sometimes she says mean things." Linda nodded. "Do you want to stay with your dad?" Julia looked at Anne, then at the judge. "Yes, but I want to see my mom too." Linda smiled, just barely. "Thank you, Julia. No further questions." Cohen didn't cross-examine. He just stared at his notes, lips moving as he counted up his losses. The judge thanked Julia and told her she could sit with the advocate. Julia walked back, chin high, no tears. Anne was broken. She tried to hide it, but her whole body was shuddering, her hands shaking so hard the pen rattled on the table. She leaned in to say something to Cohen, but he brushed her off with a look that said, "We're done." The judge took it all in, then gave a short speech about the best interests of the child, about material evidence, and the credibility of witnesses. But everyone in the room already knew the outcome. She awarded joint custody, with immediate effect. Anne was to have supervised visits until the financial mess was sorted. All allegations against Harold were dismissed, and the court reserved the right to refer any additional findings to the district attorney for possible prosecution. Gavel, bang, done. People filtered out of the room, relief on one side, devastation on the other. Anne didn't leave right away. She sat at the table, alone, staring at her phone. For a second I thought she might call Victor. But then she just put her head down and started to sob, shoulders shaking in silence. I found Harold and Julia in the hallway. She was holding his hand, and he was letting her lead the way. "Thank you," Harold said, voice raw. "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank the truth for once." He nodded, then left with Julia, moving slow but steady, like a man who'd finally remembered how to walk on his own. I stuck around, waiting to see if Anne would make a move. She didn't. Eventually, a bailiff came and asked her to leave. She wiped her face, gathered her things, and walked out with the posture of someone who knew it was over. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city looked cleaner, the air almost fresh. I sat on the courthouse steps, watched the world go by, and waited for the part where it all starts over again. The crowd outside the courthouse dispersed quick as a rumor. By the time I made it to the parking lot, most of the morning's losers were already gone, off to lick wounds, call lawyers, or crawl back to apartments where the walls kept their secrets better than any friend ever could. Anne was the exception. She stood at the edge of the sidewalk, shoulders slumped, phone pressed hard to her ear. I watched from behind a dead palm tree, just far enough to avoid becoming a character in her tragedy. She called 3 numbers, each time waiting through the rings, letting the silence answer for her. The last one she tried twice in a row, then 3, then just stared at the screen until her thumbprint left a smudge that wouldn't come off. She finally set the phone down and started to cry, but not the soft movie kind. This was the ugly crying, the kind that sounds like someone's tearing out your throat from the inside. Her hands balled up, fists hammering at her legs, and she sank down onto the curb, knees drawn to her chest. A few people slowed as they passed, but nobody stopped. They gave her space, the way you do for a sick animal. Compassion from a distance, nothing you could catch. I kept my eyes open for Victor, but he never appeared, not in the street, not in the windows above, not in the mirrors of the passing cars. Maybe he'd seen the verdict coming and skipped town. Or maybe he'd never planned to show up at all, just let Anne take the fall while he floated off to the next city and the next desperate woman willing to believe a good lie. After a while, Anne pulled herself together. She wiped her face, smoothed her hair, and put the phone away. She straightened her jacket, stood up, and stared at the glass doors of the courthouse like they were a wall she'd never climb again. For a second, I thought she might come looking for me. She had to know I was involved, the way the evidence lined up, the timing of the witnesses. But she didn't even turn her head. She just walked to her car, keys in one hand, dignity in the other, and drove off into the wet, empty morning. I stood there, letting the humidity soak through my shirt, and wondered what it felt like to lose everything in a single day. Not just the money or the house, but the future you'd built inside your head. The story of how you'd win, how you'd get out clean, the way it was supposed to end. Maybe I'd ask her someday if she ever found the nerve to call me, or maybe I'd just keep watching, same as always. The sky was breaking open, low clouds ripped apart by the first real sunlight in weeks. The city glistened, puddles turning every sidewalk into a sheet of silver. I watched the reflection of my own face in one, sharp and gaunt, then stomped through it, scattering the image into nothing. The courthouse loomed behind me, same as ever. The world spun on, judges and liars and hopefuls all lined up for another round. But for a minute at least, it felt like we'd won something, even if nobody could say exactly what. Harold and Julia waited on the courthouse steps, not talking, just sitting side by side. The light caught them both at the same angle, father and daughter, profiles sharp against the clean blue for the first time in months. I stayed across the street, half-shaded by a bus shelter and the stares of people with places to be. There was nothing left for me to do, but I watched them anyway. Sometimes it's enough to see how things land after the storm. Harold looked different, lighter, the way people do when they remember what they're for. He hunched forward, elbows on knees, and talked to Julia in a low voice. She listened, picked at the hem of her jacket, and tried not to smile. When he said something funny, she let herself laugh. Just once, sharp and bright and over too soon. No crowds, no speeches, just two people learning how to be in the same space again. The court-appointed advocate joined them for a minute, clipboard tucked under her arm. She said her piece, pointed at a car parked at the curb, and Julia nodded like she'd been expecting it. Harold stood, ran his hand over the top of her head, and they walked together toward the car. I let them go a good block before following. Old habits. They got in and sat for a while. No engine, just the radio playing a thin pop song that bled out through the cracked windows. They didn't need to be anywhere, not right away. Julia said something and Harold laughed, a real laugh this time. They rolled out a minute later, slow and careful, as if they didn't want to risk breaking the spell. I never saw Anne again. Maybe she drove until she ran out of gas. Maybe she found a job selling insurance in a city where nobody cared who she used to be. Or maybe she waited for Victor, one call after another, until she realized he'd never pick up. Either way, her story was done, at least for me. I stayed on the steps, letting the sunlight bake the damp out of my shirt, and felt the kind of tired you only get when you've spent too long rooting through other people's lies. The world was still a mess, but it was their mess now. I closed my eyes, leaned back, and let myself believe, just for a second, that things might stay this quiet, even if I knew better. The office after dark was a tomb. I unlocked the door, flipped the switch, and waited for the old fluorescents to cough themselves awake. They buzzed overhead, the only sound besides the air conditioning, which ran hot even in March. The coffee from this morning was still in the pot. I poured it out, watched the grounds cling to the glass like mold. The trash was full, the blinds all tilted at paranoid angles. I left them that way. I dropped the briefcase on the desk, popped a couple of aspirin, and sat back. There was nothing on the calendar for tomorrow, no client messages, no new leads. I liked it that way. I was about to close up when I saw the envelope. White, plain, tucked just under the crack of the door. No address, no stamp, nothing but my name, block letters in black Sharpie. I bent down and picked it up. The paper inside was thin, the kind that tears if you look at it wrong. I unfolded it, expecting a ransom note, maybe a bad drawing of a gun. Instead, just 6 words, neatly typed, centered on the page. You don't know when to quit. No signature, no threat, not directly. But the point was made. I read it twice, then pinned it to the corkboard above my desk, right next to the Polaroid of Victor and the printout of Anne's first wire transfer. I sat there for a minute, counting the ceiling tiles, listening to the way the city hummed behind the glass. I thought about calling the cops, but what would be the point? Nothing here to solve, nothing to fix. Just a reminder, some people don't believe in endings. I shut off the lights, locked the door behind me, and walked down the hall, the echo of my footsteps the only thing louder than the words still ringing in my head. Outside, the rain had started up again, same as always. I walked home under the awnings, keeping to the narrow strip where the runoff couldn't reach. The rain turned every neon sign into a smear of color on the pavement, red and blue and sickly green. Cabs hissed by, empty except for the drivers, each one hunched behind the wheel like a prisoner waiting for parole. The air smelled like salt and fried oil and the vague memory of flowers. Some nights, the city felt like a person you almost liked. Tonight, it was just another mark, one more job to finish, one more truth to wring out before the sun came up and made everything ordinary again. I cut through the park, past the benches where the lost and the sleepless traded lies for cigarettes. One of them looked up, squinting in the wet. I gave him a nod, and he nodded back. Solidarity, or maybe just the recognition of a fellow ghost. I took the long way home, circling past Julia's school. The lights were off, the flag limp in the rain. I wondered if she'd start over, or if the years ahead would taste like what she'd already survived. My building was still there, 3 stories of peeling paint and thin walls. I let myself in, climbed the stairs, and looked back once before closing the door behind me. I sat by the window, watching the water run in rivers down the glass, blurring the city into something almost gentle. I thought about Harold, about Julia, about the cases I'd lost and the ones that still crawled behind my eyelids at night. I opened a new file on my laptop, labeled it Victor, and left the rest blank. He'd be back. Or maybe it'd be someone else, wearing his face and speaking in his accent, ready to start the whole thing over with a new target and a new set of lies. But I'd be ready too. Not because I believed in happy endings, or even in justice, just because somebody had to keep the record straight, even if the only one listening was himself. The rain kept falling, the city never slept, and neither did I.